Got everybody? Yeah. Well, g'day everybody. Leading from home, we're back. It's snow, it's ice, nothing changed. Lockdown as usual. So let's do the rounds before we kick into part two of our mindset and mental health, as well as Madeline's super topic about doing a kickoff virtually. So we've got a super episode. But Phil, lockdown, Phil, how's things going?
Fine, thanks, Sean. Just getting out and about when I can, when it's safe, in between the mud. But life's good here. But life's good here. Thank you very much indeed. Just making the most of every good day.
Fantastic. And Madeline and the Dragon, how are things week one with the new beast? Any eventful things?
Well,
please.
I wish.
Please explain.
Yeah, too eventful. I got hit from behind from another driver when stopping at the zebra sign.
Normally
yeah,
the dragon does the hitting.
Dragon is down.
No.
Dragon is down.
We have a dragon down. So,
yeah.
how was Dragon? Is anything serious, or is it just
No, it's a minor bump, but I need to turn it in though.
So 1 week and now and Dragon gets put into the garage.
Yep.
You can't trust these drivers in Sweden, Phil. Like, I live in Sweden, but I'm not a Swede, so sorry, Swedes, you can't drive. How dare you hit Madeline's Dragon? So for you people out there, be careful.
It's on my shit list.
Yeah, well, exactly. So,
pardon my language.
Leading from home, we'll not be leading from the road anytime soon. People stay at home, listen to that podcast. Don't do damage. So, yes, well, let's. Well, then we've had a obviously eventful week, and thankfully there's no sporting results to complain about for Australia. So I'm happy. So we can go straight back into it. Thanks, Phil, for no things to rub in, no cricket to talk about, and. Though the one thing is happening next week for people leading from home, the tennis begins. The Australian Open, day one. So all us tennis freaks, we have the joys of leading from home, watching the tennis when it's on. So if you think that it wasn't going to happen, you're wrong.
I'll just share with you a lovely little piece that came from one of the two British players that are going to be playing. They said they've been over in Oz. Obviously, they've gone through their quarantine.
Yeah.
And they've gone out and they've played in some of the warm-up matches, and playing in front of people for the first time in 12 months has really, it's a real shock. He said, we've forgotten what a difference it's made. And I'm really excited for those players. I mean, the energy that they get from the crowds and the fact that they've got them out there. Yeah. So pleased.
No, exactly. Djokovic said the same thing. He played a practice match second day out of quarantine. He says, he said, I was emotional playing in front of crowds after 12 months. He says it makes such a big difference. So that's and for Australians, the Australian Open tennis is one of the biggest things. Even people who don't like tennis, it's the heart of Australia. So I'm so glad that being Australian, that we've got that tournament up and running, and for the players to do what they love in front of. I think it's 50% capacity. So it's bigger than what most people around the world have had to put up with for sport. So hats up for them. So go Australia. Haha. Thanks, Phil. Makes up for the India-Australia loss. So I'm going to just kick off part two of this mindset, mental strength, mental mindfulness, where we talked about last week, because I came across a podcast I listened to last week by Tim Ferriss, and he's got one of the best podcasts out there for those who haven't listened to it. But this one was particularly caught me off surprise, because it was an interview with Michael Phelps, who we know is all-time greatest Olympic swimmer, and Grant Hackett, one of the greatest Australian all-time swimmers. So I thought, oh great, I'm a sports. This would be a great, learn about sports and mental toughness and some of the tricks. But I was knocked over big time halfway through it, when it came down that Phelps was extremely open about how he's been battling mental and depression and anxiety, injuring himself, and felt like he was just a bit of rubber, and basically needed his mate, who used to be his competitor, Grant Hackett, to fly from Australia to the US, spend a few months with him to help him, to support him, as like he said, he was lost. And that just knocked me over, because we put these sports people they've got it all right, they're mental tough and they're strong. But he said, I could compartmentalize the swimming, but after swimming and things that he had during swimming, he suffered massively from mental challenges, mental depression and stuff. And that's where I think I like just to, first of all, the people to really listen to the interview, because even those who have had the slightest bit of mental challenges, and I've had my fair share, trust me, of anxiety, depression, and that type of stuff, to make so that to open up and be transparent, because the moment you do, you have no idea of the support from people around you to help you get through it. Nobody is alone with this stuff, and that's where it can hit anybody from the best sports people in the world, like the Olympics, down to somebody who thinks I'm having a bad day. Just talking about with friends, and he even said that sometimes talking with family is too close, it's too raw. So talk to your friends, like especially in lockdowns these days, pick up the phone, there's no excuse to say that I don't have time, because the biggest thing we can learn from leading from home is support and being there for everybody else.
And I think connecting that to what we said last time, it's okay to have a shitty day.
Yeah,
it really is.
Okay,
and being there for each other, within the team, outside the team.
Yeah, exactly. And it's feel like, you work with people for so many years and that type of thing. But what's your reflection in terms of, sometimes people think that, if I'm a top sports person, if I'm a top executive, I feel vulnerable that I can't say I'm struggling. But now hearing this, and I say when people hear this interview, there's no more excuses that you can't, no matter if you're a CEO of a company, if you're going through mental issues, talk about it, isn't it? Like you say, to a coach or to a friend. What's your perception of like hearing about Phelps and also both Hackett also said that he went through a divorce and went through similar depression. So this blew me away.
I think we're entering a new era, fortunately, where the subject of mental health is okay to talk about.
Yeah.
I think there are some super high-profile people talking about the subject here in the UK. Prince William has made a point of talking about the subject to top sports people here in the UK too, and encouraging people to actually make it a conversation.
Yeah.
In the world of business, I think there's a generational thing, but that actually age is no excuse. It's a mindset piece. Regardless of where you are in your career, it's okay to talk about this stuff. Yeah. And fortunately, organizations are providing more and more support to make it a reality.
Yeah. No, and that's where I think, particularly with support, podcasts are free. So that's why I urge people that if you don't have the courage to reach out to a friend and say that I'm going through problems, start with a podcast to say that you're not strange, or like I used to think that, I'm weak to ask for help, to say to people, hey, I'm not coping, or what do you mean that I was always seeing myself as being the super strong person who can be really ambitious. So for me to even think about talking about when I had anxiety that, people are going to think, or not believe you, it's a massive obstacle. So I think this podcast or other podcasts, listen to it and just change your perception. Ask for, just talk about, hey, I'm having a bad day, as you guys say last week. It's okay to say I'm not okay. And then from there, the weight of his shoulders just lift dramatically. And as Phelps said, like, he even said, like, I don't know where I'd be if Hackett hadn't flown across from Australia to the US and spend those months with him. And the fact that, and this is what I loved more than anything else, that mates would do anything for mates in terms of, Phelps, Hackett has his own family in Australia, and say to him that, hey, and the family, it's okay, go and be there for somebody to get them through it. That's the thing. People, you have no idea how much support people will do things for you to get you through a tough time. And with last year, with COVID still continuing, we know that this is happening so much around everywhere that more than anything, there's people, there's resources, and there's tools. Please use them. Don't think that you're going to go get through it by drinking alcohol every single day, or thinking that screaming at your wife or your kid that, it's an excuse. It's not. You need to get better at it and get through it. It's tough, but it gets easier, 100%. So that was my takeaway from last week that I wanted to follow up with, because as I say, I'll put the link of the podcast in the show notes. But it was definitely one of the most incredible interviews I've ever listened to, because it comes from two superstars that to have the mindset to win. Like Phelps, I think it was unbeatable in some of the events, and Hackett, it was unbeatable in his event. But then for them to reach the lows of like going through extremely dark times and alcohol problems, divorces, and now to hear them talk about it openly in front of the listeners and putting their ego aside, like as Phelps says, Tim, ask me anything. I'll be totally open and transparent. And he's a celebrity and superstar. And that to me shows leadership. Talk about leading from home. That's leadership right there in terms of this is what we all should be doing, regardless of our thing. He says we are all humans and treat people as humans. And that's the thing. Forget about your title or how people perceive me. Stuff it. Just go with, talk about what you feel like, and people will be there for you. So there you go. The other thing I wanted to talk about, we talked about books last week, was I got a new book that I want to recommend. I received picked up last week. Matthew McConaughey, those who know him as a famous actor. It's a book called Green Lights. And he's done a couple of interviews, but this is basically about, he talks a lot about, values and, going, being there for family, and also just doing, what's about who you really are. And there was an interview with him and Lewis Howes on the School of Greatness podcast, where he talks about an exercise where it says, who are you in 10 years' time? Like, when you're 60, what would you tell your 10-year-old self 10 years earlier? And that made me think too, like when we go through a lot of crossroads in our life, you say, okay, how will this influence me in 10 years' time? And me looking back at it, who do I want to be? Do I want to be a great dad, super supportive husband? Do I want to be a leader in work or sports things? And to have that perspective and then look back and say, okay, am I walking in that path today? We don't do that enough. And that's where Matthew McConaughey, like when he got asked, he says, oh, that's a super good question. He says, I haven't really thought about that much. And then he talked about himself. He talked live on the interview. Okay, Matthew, in 10 years' time, these are the things that you are turning into be, in terms of like doing everything for your family, being ever there for your kids, and these type of things. And that grounds you. And then you don't get so lost in translation with, everything about work, or saying that I'll wait till my kids get older before doing these things, because you have the time to do things and change things now. So it's a lot of that in the book about, personal development and having time to reflect, as you said, Phil, last week, having time to think, particularly these days in lockdown. So that's two reflections that, I wanted to carry on with that we said we'll just reflect upon with mindset and mental health, that, more and more things come out, and with COVID, it's super important. So now
that's also like a super, super good tip regarding the book. I really want to buy that one. So
yeah, like I say, I'll put that in the show notes, and also the interview that he had with Lewis Howes. For those who don't know his podcast, The School of Greatness, that also had a massive impact on me. I listened to it last night when I was doing my bike training, actually, and that exercise made me think a lot too, in terms of like, I've done in the past, and I've been angry with my kids when I've been stressed with work, and then if I had time, okay, what type of dad do I want to be? I don't want to be somebody who is always angry, yelling at my kids after work, or being in a bad mood. So that really made me think too, that, okay, what are the things I need to do now to like take time for myself, and before I react, like make sure I'm in a good mindset and a good mood before and spend time with my kids. I'm in a good mood, rather than say, oh, I don't have time, because your kids grow up so fast, and you can't forget it and say, I wish I was a better dad, when they were, between 5 and 10, which my kids are. So it makes you think, and that's where I think, we need to reflect a lot more and be grateful, and also start working onto the person we want to be, rather than look back at it with regrets.
So very good.
I would say,
from home.
I would say the gratefulness, being grateful. That I think Phil said that a couple of podcasts ago, that the last thing that you should do before going to bed is noting down 3 things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And that should actually go for everyone, but in terms of self-leadership and being a great leader, it's also immensely developing as a person, and goes back to what you were saying, Phil, Sean.
Yeah. And also just receiving compliments, that it's so rare these days to get compliments, especially from work, or somebody say like, hey Sean, like you're excellent in this, and you did a superb job in that, great work. That was what you did last week. That really was fantastic. I really received that at work, and but people obviously they expect it, and that's where people forget just how nice it is to receive a small compliment saying, hey Sean, one-to-one, I really appreciated what you did last week. Could be small, but everybody loves a compliment, and that's where Madeline, you and I had a talk just before this on an issue, and you said some really nice supportive words, and that's the first time where people have actually given some compliments that you know that you get, but to hear it face to face, generally it means a lot. And that's where I think us as friends and also people in organizations spend some time just giving people compliments about the truth and just recognizing who they are, which is also being grateful for, because it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Sean, I think that would be quite easy as an exercise for any leader listening to do. Do a quick inventory and just look through your team and just put a line down there and say, what was the last positive thing that I said to that team member? What was the last negative thing that I said to that team member? When was it?
Yeah.
And just do a quick check. I think one of the things that you probably discover that you over communicate with some of your team members anyway. You probably over compliment some of your team members anyway.
Yeah.
And there's probably one or two people in there who you've probably not said something positive about for quite a while. And it probably isn't malicious.
Yeah.
It's just simply because out of sight, out of mind, we're all working from home. We've all got our biases. If you and I have got a common interest in sport, of course I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to you, Brett, because I enjoy the fact that we can talk about our work and then our banter.
Yeah.
But as a leader, you've got to have that discipline to say, actually, I may like chatting to Sean because I like the banter and I like the sport, but I've got to talk to Madeline as well because she's also just as important member of my team.
Yeah, exactly.
And look, I haven't done that.
Yeah.
So just a very quick inventory.
I think that's a really nice segue into what we're going to talk about next, right? In terms of virtual kickoffs, because what you're saying about feedback and the importance of feedback, that you can do that in a virtual kickoff as well. And one of the best things and very much appreciated things that I've done with my team is a superhero exercise where everybody, if you are in a room, you write down all the good stuff about somebody, the good feedback that you want to give to somebody, to shower them in appreciation. Well, this is something that you might as well just be able to do virtually as well. And I think in times
100%.
like this, when we talk about appreciation and positive feedback and just making people feel that they are being seen and heard, I think this is the best time for doing this kind of exercise.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And and as I said, it's good to let's open up this topic, having a kickoff virtually, because as you said last week, this year you need it more than ever, particularly for teams who are going to be working virtually. So let's do some brainstorming here. And I got some actually to add your discussion, Madeline. I think it's a brilliant idea. Like I've heard some exercises for kickoffs where people they actually give somebody a superhero character to say, okay, everybody give me, how would you describe Madeline? People write down Superwoman or Batwoman, or how would you describe Sean? And people may say Shrek or something like that. And then people have to write down okay, now let's walk around the room and number one, what character have you given Madeline and for what reasons for? And when I've done this exercise and been part of this stuff, particularly with leadership groups, we've done this, some of the compliments that people who you really talk to, but you work with a lot, are incredible. Like they say, they give you the biggest compliments that your manager has never given to you, but are so sincere. It's I see Sean as one of them. I got was Sean is a lion because hearing some of his decisions he's made across his life, he's probably one of the most bravest person I've ever met. And he expanded it, and I was almost in tears, going I never thought myself as brave that I had to do what I have to do. But when he reflected upon I respect and I admire Sean for his bravery for these big decisions, and for me, he's my lion. It's incredible. So I think this kickoff exercise, one of them is gives you a way to hide behind somebody's name, but then be fully transparent and raw about, emotional about, complimentary, as well as how do you perceive somebody.
I think many of these exercises because I given this some thought before our podcast, I was thinking, okay, so how do you actually do a virtual kickoff? Yeah. But I mean, it's really not that big of a difference, right?
No.
Most things that you do in a room, you can actually transfer to the virtual environment.
Yeah.
However, I heard something really awesome that I don't know how this should work, but still, that you're sending VR goggles to your team, and then you meet in a virtual
That'd be super cool.
Okay, yep.
That's the thing that
and you solve the challenge together. You get a challenge and you get thrown out in some virtual environment. I just love that idea.
That's brilliant. I think this is where rather than always being saying how we are limited by this COVID and virtually, look at the flip side. Be innovative, as to say that, okay, how can we use virtual reality to make this fun? That the technology that is cutting edge, it's experimented in a kickoff, which is the perfect opportunity to do these things. So then, because without COVID, some people may even do hey, we're going to a virtual a VR studio as a kickoff. So I think that's it's a brilliant idea. Be creative. Be curious, as we say.
One of the things that I'd say, Sean, is I think in this virtual world, some leaders are quite impatient, and they're almost looking for instant gratification.
Yep.
And that point, the point to remember is that the reason that typical traditional kickoffs lasted a day and probably two was because it takes time to build trust. It takes time to get people comfortable enough to open up. So whilst it's critically important that you give people the opportunity to say what they want to say, you give people enough time and space so that they feel safe in a safe space to be able to say that. And that's why I'd certainly encourage people doing their virtual kickoffs to spread it over a couple of sessions, a couple of days, and give people some homework, give people something to think about that they can then reflect on before they come into the second session. And I think that's a very small but practical step that you can take. And this whole expression of slow down to go fast. People want, I want to be a high performing team and I want it now. And forgetting that the mechanics and the psychology of a high performing team, whether it's a sports team or a business team, it takes time to become perfect. And so be patient and create some frameworks. One thing I wanted to share with you as well as something I did, and it's so obvious, I just don't know why I didn't do it before, but breakout rooms. I think one of the temptations is that when you're doing a team kickoff, you've got to be together all the time. But actually, of course, once you've got 10 people on a call, one person's typically speaking and the other 9 aren't. But put 3 people in a breakout room, and now you've got a completely different dynamic. So even if you've only got a couple of hours together, I'll definitely encourage you to use at least half an hour of that in breakout discussions, so everyone can participate and everyone can contribute.
And just on that too, I know with a lot of the kickoffs we've had, you always break up into small groups, and then you got to find the spots, but if it's outdoors, go for a walk with your group and talk about it. And sometimes when you have a large group, you think, oh, where can we go? There's people sitting, that spot's taken, this spot's taken, and you spend half an hour trying to find somewhere private, and then the time's up. But now this is the ideal time, because it's okay, everybody, after this call, do a private Zoom call with your group, as I say, have a breakout room. And if anything, it's easier because you're going to be sitting in the luxury of your own home, so you feel the safe place. Plus, you don't have to look for a room. You've got to press a button, and you've got this, as like us, a three-way to okay, here's a topic. What's your reflections? And I think, so if anything, it's more efficient. But as you guys said before, it's no different to what you'd be in person. You can do the same thing, ask the same questions, but just over a screen as opposed to over face-to-face. So if anybody thinking about doing one or not doing one, 100% do a kickoff. You need it this year. And as you say, to slow down, and if anything, like you say, feel time to think. But the team needs time to reflect how are they going to work remotely this year, of all things. So, Madeline, how are you planning? Are you doing a virtual kickoff this year? What's your plans for your team, or what are your plans so far?
I am planning as we speak. I haven't set any plans in motion, but I will use this podcast as my inspiration as always. And of course, let you know about the plan going forward. I get a new team member starting 1st of March, so I'm thinking that I should wait a little bit to include him into this kickoff to make him feel part of the team. So I have about 3 to 4 weeks to plan now. So guys, you're gonna have to help me. But I've got a true inspiration here now.
Madeline, I've got the perfect inspiration for you, because I was reading the Australian paper today, and we all know how smart Australians are being creative. I have the perfect activity for your break. You know how you like to do some hard thinking stuff, and then you have some soft, fun stuff to do. Australians, of course, we come up with this. You can start doing Pinot Pilates. I don't know if they can see this. Let me hear.
Sorry, Pinot Pilates.
You do Pilates with a glass of wine in your hand. Trust, when I read this, is like, I'll send a picture of this on the show notes, but basically it's like doing Pilates poses with a glass of Pinot in your hand, and then you stop, have a sip, do another exercise, Pilates, stop, have a sip. So
sounds like my kind of
tell everybody, go onto your yoga mats, fill up a glass of Pinot, and let's begin. So that way, you do it at the end of the day, of course, not at the beginning. So yeah, when I read this, is like, cheers to Pinot Pilates. The virtual Pinot Pilates trend that has merged in lockdown is going live for the first time, with participants able to take in sleeping views with a Pinot glass in their hand. Like seriously, like, isn't fitness supposed to be without alcohol? But us Australians, has to be wine everywhere. So Pinot Pilates, that's a new trend for this year.
Okay, Madeline, my tip was slightly more mundane, so I'm so disappointed I'm doing it afterwards. But it's a build on your superhero, okay? It's a build on your superhero, and it's a nice link to what we've been talking about. Because if you think about Superman had a weakness, and it was kryptonite. And as you ask people to describe their strengths, ask them to describe their kryptonite as well. It's a very, very straight way to actually give people a chance to talk about both sides of their contribution. So easy, safe, nice language, and again, could be very revealing and a nice way to build some trust.
I love that, Phil. Thank you.
Phil, just a question on that. Why is it? And this is your curveball for the. I'll do one every episode for you. Here's a curveball for you. Why is it that we find it easier to be honest with our weaknesses or challenges when we can hide behind a character or a metaphor, rather than saying, okay, Sean, give me your top 3 weaknesses?
Oh, that's pretty harsh, isn't it?
Yeah. You're quite right in what you're saying. You do wait until the end of the broadcast to hit me with these curveballs. but I guess the answer though, Sean, is that, most people are pretty uncomfortable talking about what they're not good at. Yeah. Again, a lot of it can I'm not the psychologist, as you know, but it could be throughout their life that they've been encouraged to hide that. So by being able to use it through a metaphor might just be a safe way to start a conversation going. I mean, what I've found, when I've run this, is of course what you discover is that somebody's kryptonite is somebody else's kryptonite as well. Oh, isn't that interesting? Yeah, I have that problem too. And suddenly, that's okay, because it's a weakness we both share. Yeah. They've got some common ground. The trust is built instantly, and again, an offline conversation ensues where they're able to actually describe it, and the rest is history, as you say.
Yeah, I think
really like that. May I just ask,
because
I'm thinking how to actually structure this. I mean, what you said earlier, that the traditional kickoffs is 1 or 2 days, but sitting in front of, we talked a lot about Zoom fatigue. How should the structure look like? Can we really take 2 full days or 1 full day, or how should I think here?
No. A couple of hours at a time, Madeline, would be my absolute maximum. Couple of hours at a time, but do it over 2 or 3 days. So literally part 1, part 2, part 3, and if you like, if you think about traditional team building, that's all you would have ever done. You would have done an hour and a half coffee break, hour and a half lunch. Yeah. Hour and a half coffee break, hour and a half, and then you would have been at the end of the day. So don't try and stretch it just because you're doing it virtually. Yeah. But do it in days.
Brilliant.
And Phil, I really like and adding to like creating a safe space or mixing things up so people can be different. what I really liked about your workshops when you used to run these at the bank that I used to work for, and you say you do this everywhere, is to like either do it in a horseshoe or scatter around, and you never use PowerPoint. You always use flip charts, and that was the first time when, like I say, when I went to your workshops, and I've done a number of them when you were working for us, is that this is different. This is unusual, and I remember coming to you in the breaks going, I've got so much different thoughts and feedback when I'm in the session with people, my colleagues, than I would do normally. So that's another thing, Madeline, that giving feedback and also what works is to shake things up in terms of, put people in different rooms who don't normally talk with each other. So so they're more like, I suppose, more raw and unbiased compared to, okay, but you pick 3 people because they're all pick the ones who are safest with, mix them up, and also mix up the format. It's harder with Zoom, but I suppose take that as a way as feel like, when you set up your rooms and other things, what's your motivation for doing the way you do things?
Well, it's easy. What you do is you just don't put up a PowerPoint presentation. So you just avoid the temptation. So this is, again, your really practical tip. So Madeline, get people, if you've got stuff that you want them to look at, send it in advance, because when you're in the actual team meeting itself, you want to maximize, just as we do when we're on our call together, you want to maximize the faces of the people that you can see, because you want to see their reactions, you want to see whether they're engaged. And frankly, as a line manager, if you can't remember 3 or 4 things off a piece of paper, I mean, really, so the people who dominate their screens with a PowerPoint presentation of stuff that everyone can read faster than they can say anyway, that's how you kill the spirit of a team meeting. So maximize it, just as Sean said, get away the PowerPoint presentation, use the webcams, and then just keep the sessions nice, short and sharp, with breakout sessions in between as well, if you can.
And now I'm going to take the scientific angle to this, Madeline, because yesterday I was watching a webinar by a good friend of mine, Jamie Anderson, who does keynotes for all around the world. He talked, and he did a keynote yesterday on his bike, because he's a mad cyclist like me, mad in terms of like passionate. He was saying scientifically, you get the biggest chemicals in your brain that trigger innovation, creativity, and new thoughts after you do exercise. So you can recommend to your group to say, before we come together to do like a brainstorming session, please, I recommend, not forcing you, but for those, let's have half an hour to do any exercise you like, whether it be go for a run, go for a walk, do some skipping ropes, and then let's start here in 30 minutes. And then fire up, because it's been scientifically proven that that's when you get the biggest creativity in groups.
Brilliant.
So, but don't tell them to do Pinot Pilates, because then the alcohol will block the creativity chemical. I think it's dopamine, but I'll put it in the show note of the video of him. But
because that's something for our podcast to try out.
Exactly. Actually, yeah. Since I'm doing my training at the moment on my indoor bike, I'm going to take that experiment up, because he talked about people never having time to exercise during lockdown. He says, I'm going to prove to you that I do 7 hours of my time each week on my bike, and as long as you keep your heart rate below 120 or wherever like it is, where you can still talk, you can do a podcast. He said, I'm doing a keynote. He did it for like half an hour on his bike, 100%. So I'll back that up on an episode. I'll join a podcast with me on my bike without my stupid Lycra on, and I'll prove the point. But everybody, to be creative for your kickoffs. Superheroes, and I'm probably like Shrek. I'm losing my hair, and it's my favorite TV cartoon. So pick a favorite cartoon and be funny, and I say like enjoy it. I think that's part of the fun about having kickoffs, to have fun and to enjoy each other's company.
Good.
Well, once again, we always have fun. We always run out of time, so it's time for what's up for the weekend. Damaged Dragon time, but Madeline, do you have more ice skating to do this week, or what are your plans?
Dragon needs to rest, so there will be ice skating though. I had tons of ice skating last weekend, and this is something I will continue this weekend as well.
I think it's minus 8 this weekend, so
it's minus 12. It's crazy
minus
cold.
A big cold at night your way, so but Phil, we've got things to be excited about, because it's Six Nations time, the rugby. So,
that's
yes,
it
for all us rugby fans. And who is England playing this weekend?
We've got Scotland. We've got the Calcutta Cup this weekend. We want a little less excitement than the 38-all draw the last time that we played. So, I mean, that was 2 years ago, of course, at Twickenham, and we'll see how we get on.
Yep. Well, let's say we've got all bases covered. We've got ice skating, we have rugby, and I've got my tennis on Monday. So the things only get better. So everybody, when things are tough, there's so much to look forward to. And look at the channels: sport, ice skates. Look at Madeline's Dragon. So there you go. Plenty of tips from the this week's podcast. So all in the show notes. And everybody, just have a great weekend and reflect, have some time, do some exercise, and have fun. So see you next week. See you guys.
Very good. Thank you. Bye now.